I am Kerri Black, and I met Dr. Masnick. We were both at Florida Tech together doing our undergrad work in forensic psychology. And what I think some of the basis of her having me come here tonight is that we both started in very similar places and yet ended up in very different places, which is kind of the cool thing about studying forensic psychology. It gives you many options. So for me, what I ended up doing was
I need everybody to please mute yourself. Okay, sorry, Kerri, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So when I left Florida Tech, I went and got my master's in criminal justice, and I was working at the family violence program at Nova Southeastern. And we were doing a lot of interviewing and surveying of people to see what kind of symptoms and things were coming up in family violence. And I had a very hard time with the fact that I was interviewing people and sending them home without any fix, because I am a caretaker by nature and I want to fix things. So from there, I ended up getting licensed in New York as a marriage and family therapist, because that was a systemic approach. It wasn't looking and blaming any one person in the family for anything. It was about how each person in the system interacted, how to make those interactions healthier.
But you had to actually change and get a different degree.
Oh yeah, so I have two masters. I have the master's in criminal justice from Nova, and I have a master's in marriage and family therapy from Hofstra University up here in New York. And one of the things that allowed me to do was to work with similar families that I met in the family violence program, but to actually give them the tools to either make the decision that they weren't going to stay in that dysfunction, or to assist them in trying to make changes as a family to better not just themselves, but the family system and the behaviors among there. One of the probably most interesting things about doing that was I ended up working in the one place I always told everybody I would never work.
Yeah.
I ended up, when I graduated, I was working in a private practice in Manhattan, which is great work. But I felt like I was missing something. I was working down by Wall Street, and I was helping people with things that they wanted to improve. And there is nothing wrong with self-improvement. I think everybody can benefit from therapy, but I felt like I was missing that factor of helping people who couldn't necessarily afford therapy, or helping people who were in situations that they felt like they were never going to get out of. And so a friend offered me an opportunity to work for a substance abuse program, where at every graduate level class I took, I told everybody I would never work with addicts. I would never work with alcoholics. I watched my extended family. That was not going to be me. They were on their own. And I took this job thinking, if I hate it, I'll quit. P.S., 9 years later, that population became my specialty.
How many facilities did you run, Kerri?
So I ended up working at 3 different facilities for the same program. But I ran different parts of each of those programs, and kind of as I moved around, I was promoted. So I left there last year, and I was the assistant director of one of the programs. We had 300 clients. I had over 20 clinicians, and we were in the heart of Brentwood. So for people who don't know Long Island or New York, Brentwood is kind of the epicenter for MS-13 activity on Long Island in New York. It is a very multicultural neighborhood. There is a large undocumented population. There is a large DWI population there.
But that's no big deal, because you had a security guy that walked you out to your car every night, right?
Not even close. That's not therapeutic, so we can't have that. So I was the security guard, essentially. As the supervisor, I was the one mitigating crises and fights and whatever was going on in the lobby, and hoping and praying that if it came to it, when I called the police, they would get there fast enough. But I'll touch a little bit on that at the end, because that's one of the things that's kind of come up, especially here in New York with the police, the movement to kind of redistribute funding for police departments.
One of my students,
I was just going to say, see, I live 5 minutes from Brentwood.
Yeah, she said, I live 5 minutes from there.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so she can relate to what you're saying.
I know that area very well. So one of the things, so that population in particular, there are a lot of things that come with that population. Within the substance use field, no matter what facility I worked at, we were dealing with, I would say 90 to 95% of our clients were mandated to treatment. They were not there because they wanted to be there, or because they had necessarily a strong desire to change. In a lot of cases that came later, but what we saw was we saw referrals from probation, parole. We saw diversion programs. So up here we have family treatment court, we have drug court, we have judicial diversion program. And these are all programs with, you work with a caseworker from the court and a judge, and you work with your substance abuse facility. And if you kind of check all your boxes and do what you need to do to attend program, make kind of headway in your goals, provide negative tox results, you have the odds of getting charges, even in some cases felonies, wiped from your record. So that was the larger part of who we saw in programming. More specific than that, we had different programs. Depending on where I worked, we had focus in women's programming. We had focus on a parole track. So you're talking people who have murder charges, people who have felony assault charges, any kind of high-end parole contact would come to program with us, as well as, you know, a mom who had CPS called and they're investigating. So she's coming as part of her investigation, and whether or not she stays depends on what we see in her interactions in program, as well as what the CPS worker sees.
With HIPAA, Kerri, do they give you all of that background information?
So what happens is they get referred by CPS. So
Okay.
the client has to sign releases for CPS or probation or whoever's referred them, and for the agency I was working for.
Okay.
Most places will tell you, we're investigating you. This is something we expect to be shared. In rare cases, a client would say, I don't want to sign a release. And I would say to them, your CPS worker is going to know what this means.
Right.
Your CPS worker is going to know if you rescind your, my ability to talk to them, they're going to know either you're not attending program, you have a positive toxicology, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So
Right.
it's in your best interest. My place always was, I kind of walked the line between probation officer and counselor. So
Okay.
substance abuse fit my personality in that way, because I could sit there and listen to someone, but at some point I might have to say to them, are you going to continue to bullshit me, or are we going to talk about what's really going on?
This is where I'm not like you. Your Irish New Yorker, like, is fine. I just don't have it. I got pansy hillbilly.
So, and look, it depends. I operate a private practice now. Do I talk to all my clients like that? No. There are certain people who can handle it. You learn to read your client and what the relationship is. I found when I was working with the criminal justice population, they took me a lot more seriously when I cut them off and I said, okay, let's talk about what's really going on, versus letting them spin whatever they were trying to sell me. I lost all credibility if I took that story they spun and I went with it.
Right.
So in that respect, yes, the job 100% fit my personality, because I could do the caretaking piece while at the same time calling them out on behaviors that would catch them in trouble. So my place, I always told them I was there to be their best advocate, but the only way I could advocate for them was if they allowed me to talk to whoever referred them, and if they were honest with me. Because if you're honest with me about if you keep telling me, no, I'm not using, and I have all these positive toxicologies, I'm going to go back to the mandate and I'm going to say I have 5 positive toxicologies, and all I'm getting is I'm not using.
Right.
If you tell me I had a fight with my mom kicked me out, my boyfriend cheated on me, whatever the case may be, whatever their trigger for that moment was, we can work out a plan. What are our goals to kind of get past this trigger? And then I can go to the legal mandate and I can say to them, listen, I had Kim in my office. This is what's going on. Yes, there are positive toxicology results. She came clean with me. She told me what's going on. She's going to see me for an extra session this week. We're going to talk about what the triggers are. We have goals set in place.
Right.
9 times out of 10, the mandate's going to say, okay, let me know how it goes. Versus if I say, you're not telling me what's going on, I'm hearing on the other end of the phone, well, you can tell them the next time they go to court, they come to court, they're going to jail for a week.
Okay.
So there is that. And a lot of what we see now and what I've learned kind of over the course of when I started to when I left is the trauma piece. Everybody in their own way has experienced some sort of trauma. It's the way we process what goes on in our lives. For some people, trauma may be a fender bender. For some people, trauma may be, witnessing a murder. It runs a scale. It depends on what your coping skills are, how you've kind of been brought up. There are kids who I worked for a long time with adolescents, and we would speak to them about trauma and ask them if they ever thought they experienced trauma, and they would tell us no. But what you found out as you asked them very specific questions about their families and their living environments, they would claim they didn't suffer trauma because they were so used to the chaos going on around them. So they live in the projects. Their father was killed in a drive-by shooting. You know, mom works 2 jobs to keep food on the table. The older brother is smoking pot every day, but there's no trauma because to them, this is completely normal. But as a therapist, not normal, not how a child should have to grow up. So what we end up doing is we end up kind of educating, teaching coping skills, and getting them beyond that piece of things. Because what you have up here is we have, you treat the whole person. Mm-hmm. You're not just looking at, well, you're smoking marijuana, you're shooting heroin, whatever the case may be. Yes, do we need you to stop that? But if we don't address the other areas of your life, your mental health, your physical health, your family issues, your legal issues, I can't fix one piece and expect everything else to go well because something falls out.
Do you think that's part of the fact that New York is more liberal than, say, Florida, Texas, or whatever? Because we're not about rehabilitation.
So I will say this. I will say that I will, biased as I may be, the agency I worked for, I think, was very progressive. They were very much about incorporating trauma, treating the whole person. Their motto, so to speak, was building healthy lives. So it wasn't just about fixing what went wrong. So I think it depends on the agency because there are very much agencies. I mean, drug treatment came out of the old school. I will break you down to nothing and I will rebuild you. And when you leave here, you will be sober. Great. But when I leave your program and I don't have the structure and I don't have the drill sergeant, I don't have somebody yelling in my face, what happens then? It's kind of like the kids with the boot camps. That whole kind of mentality of I'm going to send you to military school, but when you're not in the parameters of military school, all the old behaviors slip back.
Yeah.
So in that way, yes, the agency I worked for was a little more progressive. New York is moving along. There are other states that are way better at this stuff.
Really?
Yeah. If you look, one of the big movements in the last 10 years has been sober high schools. And that's, you see a lot of that in New England, actually, where kids can elect to go to a sober high school. And part of their education curriculum is, you know, therapy and building coping skills and maintaining sobriety.
I know it's stupid, but like I need to get my mind off things right now.
So you have things like that. You have places where the diversion courts were bigger. Right now we're facing the challenge of bail reform up here. So offenses that people would get arrested for and arraigned before a judge and presented with treatment as an option, they're getting released on an appearance ticket. So they're not getting that face-to-face contact with the judge and offered diversion at the start. So we may see some of those programs suffering. That is one of my concerns. It's going to be what we start to do as a state to find a way to implement those things, because your average patrol officer doesn't know the local treatment, doesn't know the...
That's not what they're trained for.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's an issue up here. Now, that might not be an issue everywhere. And I also don't know what money is going to be allocated where. The city council up in New York City just passed a bill to reduce the NYPD budget by $1.5 billion.
No big deal.
Right.
You just said billion, right?
Yes, billion.
Okay.
After they've paid out probably close to $1 million in overtime because of protests. So there are factors that can't be considered. And then too, with what you have left, one of the things I would recommend people watch if they have the time or the interest. HBO did a documentary and it's called Joe and Ernie Crisis Cops. And it's a very, very interesting documentary on a police department in Texas where they basically train officers to respond to mental aided calls. So you're going when someone's threatening suicide. You're going when someone's saying someone's off their med, someone hasn't showered, and because they're going and they present and they start the conversation with the person similar to what a social worker would do.
Right.
And last case resort, if they have to, yes, they are armed. Yes, they are in bulletproof vests because they are responding to calls where people may have weapons in the house, where people may have assaulted people in the past. So you're attempting to have that kind of de-escalation conversation, but you're from a police standpoint. They work a plainclothes unit where they go in, they don't look as intimidating as a full officer, you know, in a uniform. And they start to have that conversation and talk people down before they walk in and they try to arrest someone. And they have the relationships with the counseling centers in the community to say, hey, I'm at a call now. I have a guy who's really looking for help. He's reporting his last drug use is this. He's having suicidal thoughts. Great, we'll see you in 10 minutes. And they literally walk them through the door and they have their intake appointment. Versus many, many places, the help is limited. So you could call today, and unless you're a priority based upon whatever sheet you fill out at your place, because each place kind of varies, you may not get seen for 2-3 days. You may not get seen for a week. And by the time that week comes,
we had, I want to say, Kira, somebody, Ashley might have been in the class. We had in Port St. Lucie, which, Kerri, you know where that is. The parents were being held hostage by a mentally ill, unstable son who was in his 30s. And law enforcement showed up, ended up being a standoff for a decent amount of time. And then by the time officers could get in, because my opinion would be because they weren't trained in that de-escalation and they didn't call the right people, he commits suicide.
Right.
But you had to call the police in it because the parents were fearful and the parents knew he had a gun. Right. So it was like this really weird thing. You were calling in who you needed to call in to stay safe, but you weren't calling in the right people that knew how to handle it.
Right. Well, so cases like that have kind of evolved in the movement to defund or reallocate police resources.
Right.
Certain cities and states, Minneapolis among them, have decided that one of the things they're suggesting is to send social workers into calls where there's mental aides, where there's domestic cases. And growing up in a law enforcement family and now working for a police department, one of the things I have learned through seeing people get hurt is that even the most innocuous of calls have the ability to go completely awry.
I would never send a social worker into a domestic
listen, I can
call.
tell you as a social worker, I didn't make enough money to be sent into that situation. Yeah. I did home visits and had to go to the projects and visit my adolescent kids and pull them out of the house. And I would see home environments and I'd have to stand there and call CPS and wait for CPS. And that was hard enough. Right. But walking in when you don't know if there's a weapon, if someone's going to hurt themselves, if someone's going to hurt others, you know, that's not to me, the better option is to kind of emulate what they did in Texas with this mental health unit and use the money rather than taking the money away, use the money to train the people who are also trained to serve and protect, train them these skills. You know, these are skills that are very teachable. You know, you're coming from a place of compassion. You're coming from a place of being honest with the client. You know, they showed specific interactions in this documentary, which is why I thought it was so pertinent, where one of the officers actually says to a guy, he's like, I'm really scared for you right now.
Right.
And they went back and they had like their debriefing on it and people had fits because you stood there in uniform with a gun on your hip and you said you were scared and that guy could have done anything. You're right. He could have. But I had to read the situation and I had to choose what it was going to take to get him to give me the gun so he didn't kill himself.
Right.
So it's going to take some rethinking. I know there will be many people, especially in my current job, who don't agree with training in mental health like that. But I think it's kind of the best of both worlds because I do think we're asking for trouble sending, you know, because the people you're going to get to send a social worker into situations like that, you're going to get brand new social workers who can't get another job.
Right.
They're going to get paid anywhere between $35,000 and $45,000 a year to walk into danger.
Right.
So number one, you'll either completely deplete the social work system because nobody's going to want the job.
That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we have a hard enough time hiring now because the state just does not allocate the funding for it. You pay all this money to go to graduate school. You have, you know, all this clinical training and then they offer you your starting job and they're like, you're going to make $38,000. Yeah. And you think, I can't feed myself on that in New York.
Right.
You know, I think the average, and this is even being conservative in most neighborhoods, this is like not even a great neighborhood. You're not paying less than $1,500 a month for a small one bedroom. Now, I remember my first one bedroom in Palm Bay, which cost me $525.
Palm Bay, she's talking Florida now.
Yeah, $525 as compared to.
I loved that apartment.
That was a great apartment.
Yes.
My mom wanted to know where the rest of it was, but it was mine. It was my first. I could afford it.
Yeah, it was
Like
cute
having to
and
walk through your
fun.
bedroom to go to the bathroom.
Right. And just so the rest of you know, it wouldn't have been an issue and her mom wouldn't have bitched about where the rest of it was if she didn't have 5,000 books. She kind of has an addiction issue.
I have a problem. I do have a problem as I look at my shelves around me. I'm not even in permanent housing right now, and I have shelves of books because I can't go anywhere without them.
So wrong.
But that's kind of the overview of the substance abuse facility. The other things we did was I got very involved in domestic violence groups and training, and women's empowerment. It became a passion project for me, empowering and enabling people to leave bad situations if they so chose, and kind of masking my inner New Yorker and supporting them if they chose to stay, even when I thought it was absolutely not the right move.
Right.
But that's why, for me, the relationships in the community became very important, because when people did leave those relationships and they came knocking at my door at the treatment facility, I needed to know I could call. Someone was going to come running and come over, and I was going to be able to go to my car and get home safe. And then what I did about a year ago was I was working technically 5 days a week, but I was on call on Saturdays. And we had this 300-person clinic. And as the assistant director, I was responsible for every client and every clinician. And I thought to myself, I don't see my friends. I don't see my family. I get home from work at 10 o'clock at night. What am I doing? You know?
We had that talk when I came to visit you.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. And there were days I loved it because I loved the never knowing what was going to happen. I loved those really rewarding days of somebody walking in and telling me, I just need you to help me. I'm ready for it, whatever you want to give me. And really rewarding days of one of my passion projects is teaching new clinicians, really developing them to do the work that I love to do. And those were great opportunities, but I was coming home spent. I had one day to get myself back together, do my grocery shopping, clean my house, and get back to the grind again. So I got offered an opportunity to work with the Nassau County Police Department, and I am now a crime analyst for them. So I spend my days reading crime reports and speaking with detectives. We put together bulletins. We do daily crime reports for our local municipalities. We do bulletins if they're looking for a person of interest, or if something goes on and we're trying to identify someone, or we're looking for information on a burglary, we'll put that out. We map those, we get whatever surveillance pictures we can and put them out. And we track every major crime in the county, from burglaries to grand larcenies to robberies, stolen vehicles. We've got a running tally of kind of what's going on, what the patterns are in the county. And depending on where we work, we have the ability to either work on projects and provide statistics to the police commissioner, or provide information to a detective squad as they're working to solve a case. And then we do things kind of behind the scenes. My first week there, I got thrown into a project, which was, for me, pretty cool. It was kind of serendipitous. We did a white paper essentially on the opiate crisis in Nassau County, which then dovetailed all of my education and experience from one end to the other. I kind of came full circle and was able to work with treatment providers in the police department and talk about some of the innovative things we were implementing as a county and where the stats have gone. Unfortunately, with coronavirus, like most places, we're seeing an increase in opiate overdoses because isolation is kind of one of the number one things that lead people to relapse when they're in substance use.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's easy to hide what you're doing. So you're isolated, you're by yourself, there's not much going on, there's nobody to talk you out of doing what you're about to do. We're seeing influxes in depression and anxiety right now, and one of the quickest ways to treat your depression and anxiety is to fall back on old habits that made you feel good.
Right.
So I think as a state, we're kind of seeing that because that's what's going on. And it's hard, for the protection of the employees as well. A lot of agencies were shut down. So you were doing individual and group sessions via Zoom, doing the best you can to reach as many people as you can. And then if you're mandated, but you can't go to a physical building, it's easy not to pick up the phone when your therapist calls if you don't really want to be there.
Right.
So
Let me ask you, and this is a morbid, sick question, but if you guys were locked down for 3 months, I needed to self-medicate because I'm losing my mind.
mm-hmm.
How were you finding the bodies? Was it because
you're
the neighbor
finding
was
because
calling?
friends or a neighbor might not hear. Sometimes a parent is calling 911 because they're finding the child's passed out. We've had people passed out on streets. I mean, the opiate crisis hit New York really, really hard, kind of in different waves. It started about 10 years ago. It was out in Suffolk County. And that's when I started working in substance use. And I would say 9 out of 10 of my clients were using heroin at that point. At that point, you could buy heroin for $7 a bag, versus
And a bag is going to last me how long?
Not long.
If I'm a new baby, I'm a new baby heroin user.
You could use a couple of bags, probably.
In a day?
Bundle is 10 bags. Oh yeah, a bundle is 10. I had people using 3 bundles, which is 30 bags by the time you leave. Because what happens is a lot of people don't start off using heroin. They start off using pills.
Pills,
but
yeah.
Pills range anywhere from $25 a pill and up, street value.
Right.
Whereas
heroin's
at
much
$7
cheaper.
a bag, it's much cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to crush it. It's already crushed for you. So you can snort it. You can shoot it. It gets into your bloodstream faster. You get that high faster. And you're consistently chasing a high that you may never achieve again.
Right.
So we see a lot now with isolation with the relapse. The other piece to relapse is if people use after not using for 6 months, and well, the last time I used 3 bags, but I haven't used in 6 months. That's where you're seeing overdose. So up here, a lot of the education has become about those kinds of things, about opiate overdose prevention. A lot of the shift is going to be to more of a harm reduction versus you cannot use.
Right.
Because the belief is you will get more people engaged in treatment that way. So you have that, and we have free Narcan trainings everywhere and anywhere. Narcan is in most places now, it's a nasal spray. Someone goes down, you believe they've taken an opiate, you can do a spray into each nostril, and it's supposed to revive them so long as the dosage works. We've had people who have had 3 and 4 rounds of Narcan administered on them before they were revived.
Wow.
And in a lot of cases, it doesn't touch fentanyl, which we now have out on the streets here, which was never, it was
our gig.
Cancer medication.
That was our gig 2 or 3 years ago, and it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had a guy try and break into the jail because he missed his friends. And so it was the most bizarre thing you'd ever see.
Yeah.
Naked people running up and down the streets. It was crazy.
Yeah. And the thing is that a lot of dealers were cutting a lot of things up here with it. So you were finding it in cocaine, you were finding it in marijuana, you were finding it in heroin because it hooks you. So people are coming back and then buying, which is when up here, what they started doing was if they could trace the source of the drug, they were charging drug dealers with felony murder.
Okay.
So that is a big push for some of our detectives up here to kind of trace that source.
Gives them a reason to chase it. Yeah. Wow.
So that was that. And now, like I said, I'm doing the crime analyst thing, but I didn't enjoy the lack of chaos. So I wanted to invite the clinical back in. So I have started a private practice. My specialties are, based upon my experience and my education, addiction, relationships, and trauma. So that is who I'm seeing. And I started this. I've always kind of had my hand in private practice, and this was kind of like a revamping and doing my own thing versus working for anybody else. I started with it's a platform similar to Zoom, but it's HIPAA compliant. And I see individuals for counseling, and I see kind of up and coming clinicians, and I do supervision and consultation with them, talking about how to work through some of these client issues where there's resistance to seeking treatment. But I know I have to, but it's not easy and it's never going to work. or just dealing with things they've never had to deal with, because we all kind of come out of school with our own specialties. We all take our own electives. When I was in school, I took electives in like mental health counseling and pharmacology and couples counseling.
Right.
So my addiction experience was kind of in the field. And then I went back and got a post-grad certificate in addiction to kind of strengthen my education in that. And trauma is a big push. We were encouraged and we were sent for trainings because the push up here now is that everything be trauma informed, whether you're working with a student in a classroom, whether you're working with a client in a clinic, to kind of approach from that trauma informed lens. And again, I'll bring it back to that documentary, because that's where they start training people, like not approaching that this person is out to get people or out to hurt people or out to commit a crime. It's approaching from, there's a history of trauma, what's going on here. They try to get as much as they're approaching the scene. You know, if it's a veteran, they try to send a cop who's also a veteran into these scenes, so that this way it's somewhat, they have some commonality and they can link with the person and start to have a conversation. And they do a lot of peer training in this. So it's not just somebody who doesn't know how to be a cop, somebody who doesn't know anything about your job coming in and training you on these pieces. It's guys who have had these trainings, who have been out in the field, who have had these life-saving measures, who are now coming back in and saying, this is what I've done and this is where it works. And it doesn't work 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. Mental health is very tricky. We used to do a lot of work where people would ask us for outcomes. I'd have parents come in and they'd want their kids to get treatment, and their first question was, well, how successful are you? Addiction treatment is not necessarily what I would call a success, and what a parent might call a success is very different. Right. Which is why we treat the whole person. If I can get you into a job that you're holding steady, if I can repair whatever rift is in your marriage because of your drug use, you know, it might not necessarily mean that you're going to be clean forever, but there are improvements to your functions of daily living. You are able to go out and be a productive member of society.
Right.
And again, you know, we've talked last week, I think it got brought up, do we believe people can change? I think I would be a terrible therapist if I didn't think people could change, but I do think that it's kind of a scale. I don't think the Bundys of the world change, but I think that if you catch people early enough, or you catch people when they are at a point of self-motivation where they want to change, there is a difference. Like I was saying to you earlier, Kim, there's a difference between the serial killer and the parolee who committed a murder during the commission of a robbery. And that was never the intent. Like the intent was to get money to feed my kids.
Right.
And I struggle with someone and I end up killing them, and I served 20 years.
Right.
And I come out now, what are my odds at rehabilitation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I think people can change? Absolutely. I don't know that I believe every person that says they can change. I think there are things we can change. Can we completely do a 180? Again, case by case basis. You know, we do a lot of looking in both substance use, in criminal justice, that whole nature versus nurture bit. I think too, for substance use, if you have a support system, whether it be AA, NA, or your blood family or your friends, whoever it is, it's going to be there to kind of pick you up by the bootstraps. Same kind of thing. Like those things play a major role. There is alcoholism rampant on both sides of my family.
Right.
I enjoy my bourbon, but I'm not falling down. I'm not missing work. I'm not, you know, there is a
You're
level
not
of
slinging
control.
back a whole bottle every night either.
Some days I feel like it, but you know, it is. And I go back to things like when we watch at Florida Tech, we watched that documentary In the Blood. And that kind of haunts me, because you think about if you could tell genetically that someone would be a criminal, where does that land us?
Right.
You know, it's like something out of a sci-fi movie. We're going to be marked or tattooed or whatever, and you're going to be the criminal. But could we, if you put someone in a better home environment where they learn better and they have the support, could they not be? You know, you have this toss up, you know, it's kind of like McCarthyism. Like, you're a communist. Okay, take him away and put him in the jail.
Right.
We'd be in that situation. I mean, I do also think that to do what I do successfully, I am able to sometimes think in a criminalistic way. So would I be one of those people that would then be labeled and kind of cast aside or marked because I have the ability to think in that way, but I don't act in that way?
Right. I get that because my specialty is sexual sadism. So I fear that all the time because I understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And so I go and I'm like, you're going to find this, or he did it for fun, or he did it for shock value or whatever. And it is a scary thing to think of. Does that mean I have the ability? I mean, it's a little, I have learned to keep my mouth shut. And when I go to a bar or a restaurant and they go, oh, what do you do for a living? I don't say that I work with sexual sadists.
I'm a statistician, something I never thought I'd say. But I think too, I mean, you look at 10 years of experience in this field working with legally mandated clients. And I go to work now and a report comes out and they'll look at me and I go, oh, it was the husband. Like before the detectives have even brought anybody in, you look at the initial case report and I'm like, it's the husband, or she's got friends. Like, you know, these things that just come up. Now, how do you, I mean, yes, you see patterns of behaviors and things, but yeah, there's a certain, you know, it goes back to education, it goes back to experience. There's a certain way certain people interact with each other. A stranger is not going to commit a murder in a certain way. You know, when there's that passion behind it, you see certain things. But again, it's that the nature versus nurture thing. It's one of the most intriguing things to me about gangs and gang membership. Okay. You know, a lot of working in Brentwood, you had kids who were sent over here by themselves for a better life, and they came here with no family. So who do they find to be their family?
Right.
Or you're having trouble putting food on your table, but there's an easy way to make money. All you have to do. And
that's what I say all the time. And I was worried because Brennan, you know, at the time, because you were around him then, well, later, but my friend used to pay him $20 or $30 an hour, sometimes even more than that, to babysit her son because he was on the spectrum. Now, you give a kid $200 because he's babysat for the last 3 hours, how am I supposed to go get him to get a job at McDonald's? Right. It's the same concept. So sling some dough or sling some burgers.
You come here without your papers. You can't legitimately get a job. So you're being underpaid.
Yep.
You do get a job. Whoever's paying you is paying you cash, not paying you nearly what you're worth. Or you can go out and make quick money here. All you have to do is X, Y, and Z, whatever they ask you to do. And we would have people who were like completely damaged, or we would have sessions where you'd be in a group setting with 12 people and someone would start to talk about something and I'd be like, okay, we got to cut this off. You and I, we're going to talk about this in an individual session, because now you don't know who's affiliated with who.
Right.
Coming from where, you know, I always had a strong, there were no hats, there were no bandanas. You did not wear a color.
Specific colors.
No.
Yeah.
You came in here as if you were going into the police station. You didn't want anybody to know what your affiliation was. And we had people who confided things in individual sessions. Right. You know, that's just the way it works. And then you had people, because you didn't know, when I was working there, we had 2 teenage girls who were kidnapped from in front of the high school, and they were both found dead. And it was an MS-13 thing. And when I tell you, grown men from that community were walking in looking like someone had stolen the life from them, and they'd get into group and someone would start talking about it, and you would have these tough construction guys just bawling their eyes out. And if they didn't come to us and they didn't have that conversation, they were going for a drink.
Right.
So now you have to get to this point where a lot of clinicians might not know what that's like. I don't. I'm very blessed. You know, I don't know what it's like to grow up in a neighborhood like that. Anything I learned about those neighborhoods, I learned from my clients. I learned by humbling myself and asking if I didn't understand something, explain it to me. I come from a place of, even in my private practice, doesn't matter if you come from a middle-class family and you come into treatment, I don't assume I know that your middle-class family is the same as my middle-class family.
Right.
You are the expert on your life experiences. You tell me what you want to change and I can help you get there, but I can't pretend to know what it's like to be a young African-American male growing up in the projects.
Right. And that's where we laugh, because I tell my students, I was white middle class in a very small town. Didn't realize until I went back as an adult that it was a very racist town, but I didn't see pot until college. Now, let's go ask kids right now who they're seeing pot at 2 or 3, 4. I'm like, they make fun of me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Those are the things that, you know, my job has been very tumultuous lately, and it has been very triggered, so to speak. Number one, by coronavirus, and then number two, by the protests.
Right.
And keeping the community safe, keeping the officers safe. I do not at all condone what went on in Minneapolis. I do not at all condone racism. I struggle with protests that have turned into riots up here. Again, I don't know what these people are feeling, but I know what I'm feeling when I say goodbye to my brother and he goes out and he's in cars, or my friends that are in cars and bricks are getting thrown through them and Molotov cocktails are getting thrown through them because somebody in a city halfway across the country did something that had nothing to do with them.
Right.
So it is tough, and conversations need to be had. And I think I find myself being very moderate in certain ways. And I think a lot of that is my education and my experience and my desire to save the world. But I did, I grew up in a middle-class family, and there are things that I will never understand other than the fact that I was taught I treat the janitor with the same respect as the CEO. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. If you want my help and you walk through that door, I could completely disagree with the way you're living your life. But if you come to me and you say to me, I need help, I need to stop this, okay. You're Joe Klein. It doesn't matter what Joe Klein's background is.
Right.
And I've worked with Wall Street guys who made millions, and I've worked with people who didn't know how they were going to put their next meal on the table.
When I got my degree in human services, I was thankful. I'm thankful for that degree because I learned I could never do it, which is when you and I, that's where we parted our ways, when we started going that direction. And I'm thankful that there are people like you that can handle it, because I can tell you I couldn't do it. Yeah, it's the stress level would be through the roof.
Well, and I think for me too, I think I took on stress in a different way because I never stayed completely clinical. I started becoming the supervisor of the clinical people.
Okay.
I had my experience before going into substance use. My main internship was on the adult inpatient psych ward. Okay. And I would come home and I would cry over cases. And my mother would say to me, this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. I have cases that haunt me to this day. I think it's, things happen at work and people look at me because I am sarcastic as all get out. I have a sick and twisted sense of humor.
Which is how we cope.
Right. Kelly likes to make fun of me because she says I'm like how Christina Yang and Meredith Grey talk about each other, like dark and twisty.
Yeah.
I'm the dark and twisty because you have to be.
Yeah.
Because when you've come into work and you've had to counsel someone who tried to kill themselves by lighting themselves on fire, you have no place else to go. That smell doesn't leave you.
No.
The vision of that doesn't leave you, and you're not even seeing the person until 4 months after they came off the burn unit.
Right.
And they're still in the hospital and they're still in lockdown. And it's hard, but someone has to do it. And there are those times that you have these turning points, but you have to be prepared that you are not God. You cannot save anybody. And I learned that very harshly in substance use, especially with the opiate epidemic. My first client was a 19-year-old female who had qualified for the rowing team at Dartmouth and overdosed and died.
And you remember her 10 years later?
Oh, I could tell you her name. I could tell you about her family. It was my first true experience with a client dying. It was the first time I ever had to help my clients grieve. It was a battle between me and upper management because, again, trying to protect my clients. I was going to the wake because my clients were going to the wake.
Right.
And they weren't going to go to the wake and fall apart. And we had to have the conversation of, professionalism and leaving things at the door. And I said, that's great. I'm not going. Would it help me to go? Sure. I'm sure it would. But at the same time, we have a community van and we take these women on field trips. This is by no means a field trip, but why would I not put 10 of them in a van, take them to the wake, bring them back here so they can decompress, talk about what's going on, talk about what safety measures they're putting in place for themselves.
So you don't have another one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do we learn from this? Where do we go?
This is why you and I were in so much trouble in undergrad.
Well, you know, I don't tell my clients those stories.
Yeah. Oh, dear Lord.
But that's it. You have to do things like that. I enjoy my free time because when I am not free, I am listening to these horrific things from clients, or I'm reading case reports that are horrific.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm working with you can't unsee it.
So are you going to choose to, if your private practice takes off and goes, how big are you going to let that get? Or are you going to stay an analyst with a part-time? You're going to keep your feet in both worlds.
I'm going to keep my feet in both worlds.
Why?
For the selfish reasons of health benefits and pension with my day job.
I was going to say you'd make more money on the other side, but now
I will, but this is guaranteed money. Whereas if
Right.
a client doesn't show in private practice, you don't get paid.
Okay.
There are several things. As much as I love to save the world, I love my day job. It is a puzzle. I get to be, oh God, I'm not even going to remember her name. The chick from Criminal Minds that sits behind the computer all day, and I have access to every
Penelope.
system. Yeah, Penelope. I have access to every system. I have security clearance. A detective calls me. I run a name. You know.
I got a couple
You would
names.
think the guys I date would be a little more afraid of me and what I might find out. But it's exciting to me. It's intriguing to me. It's in my blood. It's one of those things that cases my brother and my dad would come home and talk about. I was kind of on the peripheral, and now I'm in the thick of it.
Okay, that leaves me, only because you and I have known each other so long, I want you to tell everybody, it's in, especially when you brought up the movie, it's in the blood. Is law enforcement in your blood?
I think we were raised in a way that
No. How many of you are there in law enforcement in your family?
My grandfather on my mom's side, my mom's brother-in-law, my dad, my brother, my cousin. And then we have like extended family that's military and FBI, and it's a lot. But I think it's not necessarily an in the blood thing. I think it's a family values thing. Because my brother never thought that's what he wanted to be.
Right.
And he kind of took the test on a whim because he was.
And that's all you ever talked about.
Right. Well, yeah. I think if you talk to my parents now, they're thrilled that we're both very happy with what we do. But I think they would have thought I would have been the one running around the city with a gun.
Right.
But I think we were all brought up very kind of family, God, and country. It sounds very Southern small town for a New York City kid. But we were very much brought up in the church, in service to your community, in doing for others, in not being so insulated that like we didn't know what was going on in the outside world. My parents always kind of exposed us to that.
Especially when your mother was yelling, "Please, Kerri, don't do this."
Oh my,
for years.
She didn't even yell it at me. I thought my father was gonna end up 6 feet under when he brought the applications home for me. I would have been his clone in more ways than one.
Yeah.
And I don't think she was ready for that. But this is for my mother, especially, no, I'm not a cop out on the street. She doesn't have to worry in that respect. No, I'm not working in Brentwood with parolees and gang members and those kinds of things. I am not the person locking the building at 9:30 at night, looking both ways to make sure nobody's at the building and not unhappy. Though I will say, not that you can ever truly trust anybody in those situations, but there were a couple of situations where I literally had to ask people to stand down and let me fight my own battles because I didn't want to see people going back to jail because they were defending me with things going on.
Right.
So I won't say that I never felt uncomfortable. I never felt unsafe, but I felt like I had a pretty firm handle in the moment.
Mhm. Okay. Do any of you guys have questions for Kerri? Trust me, with her family, and I know them and I love them. Her dad, her brother, they're giants. Your brother actually got COVID by working in Times Square. That was his beat.
He was there in Brooklyn mostly, but yeah, he got corona. He had corona. He was out.
Yeah.
And later, when the antibody test came out, we found out that I probably had it at the same time because I was exposed to him in work, and thankfully showed no signs. But nobody can seem to tell me what that means or for how long the antibodies will last, or
Does,
you know,
does that mean you're good or not?
Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't be licking any doorknobs. So. That's my plan. I mean, I had to go to work the whole time anyway. So it's, you know, the police department is a 24/7 operation. We were deemed essential.
Right.
Clerical positions were able to be home with their families, but we were kind of in the thick of it. We were at that point, our lives were COVID. It was how many cases we had in the county, how many were transported, to what hospitals were they transported, how many deaths did we have, how old were these people, what was the community they came from, what was the race. Because there was a lot of speculation, I want to say, because I don't think our numbers truly supported it in the county anyway, that minority communities were being hit harder. And the question was access to care. But we took everybody and anybody in ambulances. We had FEMA up here. They were taking people in ambulances, and our hospitals were just overrun. We shut down other units to put nurses. You know, you could have been a pediatric nurse, but this week you're a COVID nurse.
Right.
And we were just not taking patients for anything else. And it was, I will say, we were on lockdown for 3 months. And for most of that 3 months, we were kind of in the height of.
That's why I'm a little nervous, because it's being said that we are now becoming the new you.
Well, yeah, they're talking about Phoenix and Texas. And saw a couple of quotes from your governor today.
We don't want to go.
We are not going backwards. We are not closing businesses. Okay.
Yeah. When I'm being told,
in hindsight, it's easy to say close businesses and close everything. Yeah. Number one, because I work for a county municipality and I still have a job.
Right.
Number two, because we're now re-entering and reopening things.
Right.
So I am still nervous. We can eat indoors and outdoors, and I'm kind of like, if we have the option and it's not 90 degrees, I'd like to be outside.
We were ahead of you. We were at 75% indoor.
Yeah, we're 50% indoor right now on the island. The city has not moved. The city is supposed to go to phase 3 on Monday. But like I said, the governor and the mayor are kind of like, we may not open indoor seating ever.
I think they hate each other.
Oh, they absolutely do, because each one needs the limelight more than the other one. And the mayor is just completely screwed, because depending on the day, he's either backing the cops or not backing the cops. So he doesn't have the support of them completely, and he doesn't have the support of the population completely. Like, he thought he was going to win this with the communities, and I'm sure he has his sights set on something bigger than being mayor. And we have had several events where the cops have turned their backs on him. And this year, for the first time, he went and they had a memorial mass for George Floyd, and the entire attendee list just stood up and turned around, and they were done with him.
Wow.
So I don't know if he has a friend left in the city.
Really?
Because he's trying to play both sides. But again, I'm biased. I'm pro police. I'm pro. You know.
But you know what? You and I have both changed. We both used to be very, very much 100% pro police. And now we both have found a little bit more balance.
Right.
We did it in completely different ways, but I think we both realized from what we were seeing that we needed to find that balance.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. I am pro good police.
Yeah.
I am pro providing funding and different things. I am pro 100% this guy in Minneapolis, so they can do what they like with him. They can feed him to the sharks.
Right.
But, and it's sad, because like I've had conversations with my fellow therapists. There are some really shitty therapists out there, but nobody walks around saying all therapists are bad. You know, there are some really crappy college professors. We've experienced some of them.
Memories do not exist.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that it's unfortunate that in this situation, you know, every article up here leads with, if you are a cop, good, bad, or indifferent,
You're a bad guy.
your profession is in there. Like nobody's ever going to say therapist blank blank blank.
Right.
You know, insert headline here.
Yeah.
It is. It's sad, but it's, you know, I worry about my friends and family, but I also am grateful and happy that they're in the positions they're in, because I feel like I know them well enough to know
that they know
they're
how
the
to
good
act.
guys out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the good guys out there.
I would agree. Meeting as much of your family as I have, I would agree. So, questions for Kerri, guys. She's pretty much seen it and done it all. The only thing she hasn't done is been in the jail. And we never got arrested for anything, so we're good.
I wouldn't be sitting in my chair doing my job right now if I had that on my record.
That's true too. So.
You know, I found out the other day they were talking about how strict our hiring process was. If you have 2 speeding tickets, you may not get the job in my county.
Really? Wow.
It's so tight because there's so many applicants, because they are one of the better departments. They are one of the better paid departments. They are one of the safer departments.
You're the highest paid department. You're the highest paid PD in the country.
One of the, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say.
But again, well worth it. They start at 30-something thousand. So it's not like they have steps and they get to top pay.
Right.
But they're also required to get to top pay. You're required to have a 4-year degree, or like there are all these steps and requirements. You can't just walk in off the street and make what they make. But yes, you know, I had a good life because of this job.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't do 2 things at once. Oh, we don't want you to OD. Okay. I don't want to keep her forever. I have no idea how long. It's an hour. It's been an hour. That's awesome. So any questions for her? Because this is a little bit different. Normally we talk a case or whatever, but this is kind of, I wanted to show you, especially because I have so many students that you guys are getting really close to graduating. And if I hear one more I'm going to go, Larry, you're going to have to bail me out, because if I hear one more person say, you can't do anything with a criminal justice degree, I'm going to lose my mind, because I teach. What the hell does that have to do with criminal justice? I made it work. You and I started in the same place, and we ended up in opposite ends of the universe.
I mean, if you think about people we graduated with.
Nikki's a cop. That was the 3 of us.
Natalia's a lawyer.
Yep. In Canada.
You've kind of got it runs the gamut. Oh, sorry. I'm just seeing a question. Do I know anything about the New York Police Alliance or the union? I don't know about any statewide. So Nassau County has their own unions. We have the Police Benevolent Association, which is just strictly patrol officers. Then you have a Detectives Association, and then you have the Superior Officers Association, which is anybody from sergeant to like 3-star chiefs gets covered.
That's Dad, right?
Yeah, that was he was the president of that union when he retired. Yeah. So we have our own unions within, and then we also have the Fraternal Order of Police, which is a national organization, which a lot of departments in the South, actually, their guys are members there, because you guys are right to work states. So they don't organize unions within their own department, but they can be a member of the national organization. They can also be a member of NAPO, which is the National Association of Police Organizations. And they do annual conferences as well. And they invite different union leadership and various people from police departments. And they have things on benefits, substance abuse treatment. We did one up in New York a couple of years ago, and they had different presentations, and the guys who go for work have those presentations. But then we had a mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral. They have like a couple of like, wherever you go, there's that kind of touristy piece to it. And then the city has the Police Benevolent Association, the Sergeants Benevolent Association, they have like almost every rank has a union because they are so much larger. They are, what conferences do I look forward to each year? Okay, so for me, I love CrimeCon, and I'm really hoping it's not canceled this year because nobody's getting married or having babies or having an
I know.
anniversary in
If any of
October.
your friends pull any, I'm
Well, they
having a
can't have
Corona
weddings up here
baby.
because we can only gather with 25 people. So I really
Yeah, but it only takes 2 to make a Corona baby.
well then, my friends with young kids are not really letting me see them right now, which is
Yeah.
killing me a little bit. I have 2 little ones that I can see right now. I have to get my fix every week.
I
So-
only get to see my granddaughter once a week.
Oh, God, that would kill me.
Yeah,
That would kill me.
it's been bad.
So what conferences do I look forward to each year? So for me, there is CrimeCon. Police agency wise, and I have yet to go to this because we fight over who's going to go. It's in upstate New York. We have a gun involved violence program, the GIVE program, where we get grant money and we do certain things in certain communities. They do, from what I hear, a pretty terrific conference, and I'm really hoping that they have it this year and I can go to that. They did an amazing workshop with convicted felons talking about their experiences with cops and how they were kind of raised and what their fear level was. We have that. We are, what else? I do a lot of therapy conferences. We do a lot of suicide prevention workshops up here, and I've had the opportunity to attend with the police department and on my own, because you are handling things in a slightly different way. So there are those things. I attend online and in-person trainings for trauma, addiction, domestic violence, kind of anything I can get my hands on. I am a nerd. If I was independently wealthy, I would still be going to school. I would love to be Dr. Black someday, but I cry every time my student loan bill comes right now. So that's
I'm going back.
I know. And I looked and I almost choked on the fees. But do you know that John Jay actually has some certificate programs that are very affordable?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And they have some things on like testifying as a forensic psychologist, like all these things that, again, would marry my 2 worlds.
Yeah.
The forensics piece and the treatment.
See, I got lucky when I looked at, once you've done a PhD, master's looks like I can afford that.
Oh God, yeah. Well,
yeah, I'm like, okay, no problem.
I already have 2 masters. It's the PhD or bust at this point.
Yeah. So, but 3 of the classes, the core classes, there's only 4 core classes. 3 of them I took for my PhD. So I'm sending all that documentation because that saves me 1/3 of the degree.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What else do I see? I have trauma training. The school district is required trauma-informed training for all teachers. Do I think that should be required for teachers, police, and certain other professions across the nation? Okay. I'm going to preface this by saying that I speak for myself and not the Nassau County Police Department because I don't want to find myself in trouble if anybody sees this. Yes, I think that it would benefit every profession to have trauma-informed training. It is not a lengthy training. If anybody is interested in researching trauma-informed care and training, the model is called Seeking Safety. It is written by Lisa Najavitz. It was originally specified for women in substance use treatment. What they are finding now is that these cues and clues are being used in all kinds of settings. I did a mental health, our state offers a mental health first aid training, which may be offered in other states. And they go over this in classrooms and using it with children with mental health issues. They're starting to use it in our like juvenile halls, for lack of a better word. I don't even know what we're calling them anymore. Yes, absolutely, because it teaches people how to approach. You're not approaching in a confrontational manner. You are approaching from, I ran an alternative middle school, and that's where this all started for me. And it was in the building of a substance abuse program. And when I approached a child who was acting out, it was never, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? Which is what they were hearing from their teachers. I would approach with a bag of snacks, because I always bribe them, and give them whatever snack they wanted. And they'd sit down in my office and I'd be like, what's going on today? And they'd be like, what are you talking about? And it's, something's happening. Something's different today. Tell me what's going on. Is it something at home? Is it something going on inside your head? It's that softening your approach and understanding that there is something behind the behavior. It's not because I want to act out and be a pain in the ass. It's because sometimes they literally cannot control the behavior. You know, we're seeing that with kids who are unmedicated or undiagnosed, or because they're having problems at home and they can't express themselves at home. So they're coming in and they're frustrated and annoyed with everybody else at home. But it's taking that time to take a step back, offer them the ability to say what's going on, and taking it from there. So yes, I think everybody should take it because I just think it makes us better communicators. What do I have 2 masters in? I have a master's in criminal justice from Nova, and I have a master's in marriage and family therapy from Hofstra University. What are some good certificate courses to take? It depends on what you want to go into. John Jay has like 5 of them, I believe. One is for criminal intelligence analyst. One is forensic psychology. That forensic psychology requires you to have some kind of psychology or clinical classes.
Right.
They have one for computer crime, I believe. And I may be misspeaking on this, and I honestly cannot remember what the other 2 are, but I do remember thinking I could do this versus they have a really cool program. I would be very intrigued in getting my PhD there, except that they expect that to be your full-time job, and I need to feed myself.
Yes.
So I cannot afford to give up my job, go back to school full-time, and live on a $25,000
I
a
am
year
praying
stipend.
to God because one of my adjunct teachers in my new master's is a SUNY teacher. I'm praying to God. That's all I can say. I'm like, because I've read some stuff and I'm like, please don't give us tons of homework. Please don't give us tons of homework. Because then I'm going to take it out on them.
Why is it from Are they from Stony Brook?
I don't know. I have to.
So Stony Brook has like a lot of classes they do social work programs. So they do a lot of social justice and social policy.
Yeah.
There. Yeah, it's interesting. The SUNY system and the CUNY system. So you have the 2 city and state schools. So
Yeah.
John Jay is a CUNY, a city school.
And then maybe it's CUNY because I know
It's probably from either John Jay or Thoreau.
He's a John Jay guy.
Okay, yeah. So then it's
CUNY. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, all I know is I saw his picture and went, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So other good certificate courses. I mean, it depends on what you're interested in. I have a post-grad certificate in substance abuse. I'm working on a post-grad certificate in trauma. But again, some of these classes you don't necessarily need a certificate for. You can get trainings that say they're done. What I will do is I can put together I can put together a list of places I kind of get my online trainings.
I do my professional development that way too. I free certificates like through FEMA or things like
a lot of these are not free because everybody's got to make their money somehow.
Yeah, well, yours would be a little bit more.
And I'm required, right? So for my licensure, I'm required every 2 years to have 30 credits of continuing ed.
Right.
So some places of employment pay for that because I'm not using my license at my current place of employment.
They're not going
to.
Right.
But thankfully, I have the ability to attend a schedule or go online. And then, so it's trauma, it's substance use. It would be, what I would say is look up whatever you have an interest in. Oh, victimology is one of the other John Jay ones.
Yes.
So it would depend on what you're interested in doing, but I will say this, criminal justice degree has kind of become like the business or psychology degree from when we were in school. You could do anything.
Yep.
You can become a cop, you can go to graduate school, you can become a lawyer, you can become a licensed professional counselor in any number of states.
Yeah.
You can basically get a job because a lot of places are just looking for you to have a college degree because it shows discipline and focus. And a lot of municipalities to weed out candidates now. You don't need I don't think there's any police department in New York that you need a degree in. You need 60 credits to get hired. But in my department, if you want the points for your education to get promoted, and I will tell this based upon my dad's life experience. In 1988, I believe it was, he took a test for sergeant. and he scored the same exact 4 score as somebody else, and they got promoted, and he got promoted almost 10 years later.
Yeah, they all of our agencies here locally are requiring an associate's degree, and they are now switching it. I think Fort Pierce has already done it. They're bachelor's degrees, so they're requiring them. So like if you're required to have an associate's, if you want promoted, you better have a bachelor's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's what we're seeing up here too.
yeah.
And we have a partnership. The unions have a partnership, I believe it is, with Malloy College up here. So they give us a discount on tuition, but it's still a private university, so it's expensive.
Right.
And also, I don't know, I'm pretty sure they're a national company, but Union Plus, you can join as a member of any union, and they offer benefits to anybody enrolled in a union. And some of it is educational credits or discounted education. I don't believe I've seen anything. I don't know if there's definitely not anything on doctorates. There may be some master's degrees on there. But it's a pretty cool place to check out for people who want a further education. The other thing is if you don't need your degree to do anything, go in there and offer to audit classes. A lot of community colleges offer the ability to go in and sit through a class,
Yes.
and you can pick up so much information. So I'm trying to get my dad to do now that he's retired, because he needs something to do.
Your dad's not going back to school.
My father is 3 credits shy of his bachelor's degree.
Yeah, how are you going to get him in? Oh, that's it. I'm going to have to friend him on Facebook now and just stalk him.
3 credits.
That I can't deal with. Okay. If you would have said he's 3 semesters, I'd have been
Nope.
like, okay.
3 credits, Kim. 3 credits. 3 credits.
Are they all the same class? So he only needs 1 class?
I mean, I don't even know what they would do at this point, because he hasn't been in school in forever.
It doesn't matter. The PhD is the only one that has a time
limit. So
yeah.
He has not been in school, I think, since I'm in high school, which was a long time ago. I won't talk about how long ago that was, because like I would come home and bring my grades home, and he'd bring his grades home. And he was doing that because, again, the more credits you took and the closer you got to certain things.
Right.
For promotion and
Oh,
otherwise.
I'm so going to be obnoxious.
3 credits.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And now he's retired, and he's thinking, like, I spent enough money on your education and your brother's education. Like, what do I? And I'm like,
oh my God, then the 3 of us will chip in and we'll pay for the 3 credits.
like, I can't.
So.
Kelly's yelling, Dad, get it together. Yeah, he needs to. It's perfect.
That's
My
it.
mother needs
Kelly,
him out of the house
we'll
anyway.
go visit.
But yeah, I mean, look, it took my brother 7 years to get his bachelor's degree, but he's got it. And given what's going on now, I think he's happy he's got it, because who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. And you know what? That's almost becoming the average time frame for those that are working and doing it. It's 7 is about right. I don't like it because it's just so drawn out for them that they're stressed for so long, but that's about average.
Well, this is because Kyle went to Florida State and spent more time making beer pong tables than he did going to class.
You're not. This is being recorded. Don't make me have to.
He graduated in the end from Old Westbury in New York.
Okay, all right, there we go. Good job,
someone
Kyle.
asked, and I see the questions are flying, but somebody asked about my opinions on police reform.
Okay.
And I will try to remain PC. I have a lot of feelings about this.
So you don't remain PC. This is a private group.
Okay.
So just be real. They're gonna like. Some of them will like you, and some of them will hate you. You're not.
That's fine. I'm used to that. Again,
yeah.
Straight talking New Yorker.
Yep.
I think I would prefer to hear from people who call to defund the police and reform the police what their actual ideas are before calling for just blatant chopping block of taking funds away. Especially, I have feelings with this, obviously working for police department and knowing people who work for police department. We are so far in the hole with our budget after Corona that if you are going to take more money, I don't know where you're going to take it from, number one.
Right.
The millions of dollars we are behind on, because how many officers were out sick? Now you're calling people in on overtime. Now you don't have enough people. You're holding people over. You have to be able to man your precincts. You have to be able to, EMS does not go on a call without the police out here.
Right. That's how we are too.
We are very much in the hole from Corona. I would also say that it should be, do I think there should be input on what the training should be? I'm not a fan of taking money away. I'm a fan of understanding where the money goes and maybe redirecting money within that department. If you believe there is an issue in that department, my thought process is there's likely a way to fix it. So if there's a way to fix it, it's going to cost money. So if we take more money from them, it's hard to fix it.
I think Larry might know. I think it was in the 80s that we defunded a lot of law enforcement agencies. And what it actually did was the data shows that the underprivileged that
Suffer
were
the most.
asking for it were the ones that ended up being more victimized and got hurt even more. Is that right, Larry?
Yeah, that happened actually. I don't know what's wrong with my picture here.
I don't know, but you're blue, but it's kind of cool, so it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking at New York City now. The first thing that went on the chopping block was our anti-crime teams got pulled. I am aware of a precinct with their night crime team by March had already almost 30 guns off the street. They now no longer exist. There is no anti-crime in New York City at all because they felt that there were aggressive approaches. And are there officers in there that I'm sure are aggressive? Of course. You're going to find, like we said, those outliers kind of anywhere. My fear is that we will see the New York City of the 1980s with defunding, with disbanding anti-crime teams. The benefit to having plainclothes guys out there is being able to get those guns off the street. We have seen, I want to say it's close to a 400% increase in shooting incidents just in like the last few weeks in New York City. We are not hearing anything about that because it doesn't meet the agenda. But a life is a life. I don't think you want to try to avoid that no matter who is at fault, not at fault, whatever the case may be. And I think we will continue to see those numbers spike. Unfortunately, I think that you see a pendulum that swings in law enforcement, and you go to things like 3 strikes you're out, then you go to things like bail reform, then you go to, we're kind of at the extreme in New York right now. We have bail reform where basically you can be caught with a loaded weapon and you get an appearance ticket. You can burglarize a house and you get an appearance ticket. You're talking major crimes here. So long as the city council and the mayor's office and the governor's office have declared them to be nonviolent, traumatic as they may be, occupied burglaries, they can be released with an appearance ticket. We had a Chilean crew operating in Nassau County. They came, they flew in, they were hitting high-end houses, getting tens of thousands of dollars in money, jewelry, and handbags. I'd like to live there. Fancy handbags. They were released on an appearance ticket, and shocker of all shocks, none of them showed up for their court date.
No.
So we're seeing that a lot, and they're showing, I think the statistics for the city show that 10% of inmates from Rikers who were released for coronavirus purposes have reoffended. So was the system perfect? No, by no means was it perfect. It is a broken system. I don't know that we will ever be perfect, but I think that we are in a position where we are putting the public at the most risk right now. We are, releasing people without any consequence. We are disbanding crime teams that are taking guns off the street. But things do need to change. And again, it's the hot button topic for me because it marries the two things I'm interested in. It's why I brought up that documentary at the beginning. It's why I joke that I'm going to give homework to the police commissioner and ask him to watch it in my jurisdiction. So it's Joe and Ernie Crisis Cops, and it was released by HBO.
Okay, I'm going to look for that.
Yeah, I think it's free on YouTube right now until July 15th. They put something up because they're really pushing this.
Okay.
But it is also on HBO Go or whatever subscription you have. And I think those are going to be the types of things you're going to want to see jurisdiction move to do.
Right.
Whereas instead of taking money away, offering training for specialized details. You know, if you're not going to have enforcement and you're not going to have anti-crime, find your guys that can go out and build those community relationships by saving lives. Let's see, where else are we? Question about trauma-informed training and keeping staff motivated during those trainings. It's hard. I remember my first trauma-informed care training. I was working in a substance use facility. I was working with adolescents, and we were trying to control behaviors. And I had people who had probably been in the field for close to 20 years at that point who were in the training. And they came from that model of, it's boot camp or bust. I will break you down and I will put you back together and you will leave here and you will be in a better spot. So the shifting from that punitive to the trauma-informed care, it was a shift, but when you we worked with a lot of curriculum-based stuff to get people used to even the new language. I mean,
I was going to say your language is new because we would call that we're going rehabilitative or punitive.
Right. So
and you're using totally language that's, I think that would be better used and better understood.
So I think that's it. Substance abusers in general were never seen as people. They were the dirty bum on the street. Well, the reality is that substance users are not the guy drunk passed out on the corner. They're nurses, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're cops, they're whoever. And it's one of those things that just does not discriminate. You can be of any background and have this issue. So learning to treat people like people. When I started, it was very much, you will come to treatment or I will call your mandate. You will come to treatment or you will go to jail. When you come to treatment and you give me a urine and it's positive for something, it was never that you were positive or that we suspect you used. It was you had a dirty urine. And now people are like, you can't even use that phrase. So we have swung, and agree, disagree, whatever the language may be. It's hard when you are kind of raised in that world where you are punished or you are kicked out of treatment for not complying, or you are all of these negative consequences, instead of understanding, we're all taught addiction is a disease, but then we're treating it as if we have a kid acting out because they just want to act out.
If it's a crime. Yeah.
Right. Would you treat diabetes in the same way? If your sugar spikes, are we sending you to jail? If your sugar spikes, are we telling you, well, you're in trouble now, you better get ready to go before the judge? No, you're finding out what medication works. You're having a conversation. You're tracking diet. You're tracking sleep. So all of these things about treating the person as the whole person is where we're kind of at now, with that blended with, the trauma-informed care of understanding that I would venture a guess that 85 to 90% of people who come into substance use treatment have been traumatized in some way. The addiction is a symptom of something larger.
Right. Well, because nobody wakes up one day. I mean, I say that about certain crimes. Nobody wakes up one day and says, oh, I just want to be a junkie. I mean,
well, that's Brennan, it. You see people going out and having a drink, and kids have fun, and can that lead to something? But nobody wakes up one morning and thinks, I'll just stick a needle in my arm.
Yeah.
That's the next, you graduate to that.
Right. I meant to call you, and it's been months and months and months, but Brennan was shocked because he was going into Walmart that's on US 1 in Port St. Lucie here, and a guy had OD'd sitting at the door to the entrance of Walmart. And nobody called, but everybody stopped to take a picture or an Instagram or whatever. And my kid's not perfect. You know him very well. Mm-hmm. So I was surprised. He's the one who called 911. He's the one that waited until law enforcement came. And he's the one that waited until they made sure the Narcan worked.
Right.
So, but he said everybody else, for them, it was just like, let's go Facebook Live.
Wow, we go Facebook Live. We step right over people. It's the smartphones are that, and social media will be the death of humanity.
Yeah. So,
And then the other part of this question was mental health checks for company employees. I will tell you that I wish more companies did this, whether it's a police department, whether it's a mental health facility. I got my team when I left was my family. I knew them well enough to walk into an office and say, you need to take an hour. You need to make sure you're going to take your lunch. You haven't scheduled vacation yet this year. When are you going on vacation? These jobs will eat you alive from things you see and hear. I know that I can speak for my department. We have a very active EAP with the police department. We do a lot of work on suicide prevention. We have officers trained at every rank and every precinct to do peer support counseling, to do crisis de-escalation after a major call goes out. If you fire your weapon, if you see someone fire a weapon, if you are exposed to someone harming themselves in some way, if you are exposed to a child death, you get peer support. And that's kind of like the first level of defense.
Kerri, Cujo needs a little therapy here.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really deal with the four-legged species.
And the funny thing is, this is the one who gets eaten.
He gets eaten.
Okay, I'm going to actually just toss them and run. Okay. So, Larry, you need a dog? You need a dog? I got 3.
No, thank you. I have one.
So, you got 1. I got 3. I'll share.
No, that's good. I'm good.
Whatever.
I put down there in the chat the union AFL-CIO Union Plus benefits link for everybody if they're interested in that.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you. No, because I was trying to, when she turned around and mentioned the video and this and that, I was trying to write, put them in my phone real quick too.
And I'll send you an email. I'll see if I can find that YouTube link. Because they've also, the one guy from the documentary has done like a ton of TED Talks. So he goes around the country training other people now because they were the first 2 in this unit in the department. And I think they started out as 2 of them. And now they're like 12 or 16 people at this point. So they're by no means capturing every mental health call, but every little bit helps. It puts them out in the community in a different light.
At least they're doing something.
Right. And it connects them with the community agencies that you want to see people connected to. Right. You're kind of bypassing the whole, ignoring the mental health and throwing someone in a jail cell.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have one where I told you I was doing things to get that perspective, that balance that I didn't have because I was so pro-cop. I did the public defense investigator program, which down here for us is a voluntary program. Like, you don't get paid. So it's great. And I have a ton of my students do it and whatever, but I can tell you, I had one case that was a mental health case, and I'm never going to forget it, and I'm never going to get over it, and I don't know how to solve it, and this is why I could never do your job. I call him Poppy, okay? He's from, because everything he's like, Poppy loves you, He's Haitian, he's adorable, he's this big. Did he hit some guy in the head with a hammer? Yes, but the guy probably shouldn't have tried to steal his money, okay? But here's the thing. They get him on trespassing when he goes to Walmart. He has dementia, Kerri. He can't remember. Yeah. So he probably doesn't even know that he didn't pay for that item. He probably just walked out the door. So then he gets 30 days in jail. And then, he forgets that he's not supposed to be at Walmart. He goes back to Walmart and he comes back in, and then it's Kim and Poppy again. I want to adopt the man, for God's sake, because he has no family here. He's just a grandpa with dementia.
Well, and I think so for me and being spoiled, I worked for an agency because it was the whole person. We had psychiatrists on staff. Yeah. So we had a similar situation, and the guy comes in. And I look at my boss and I'm like, I need an appointment with the psych. And she's like, what? I'm like, there's no way. I said, either there's some kind of mental defect, whether it's dementia, whether it's some kind of learning disability, whether it's some kind of traumatic brain injury. And we would walk them into the psych, and the psych would say to me, You need to get him in to see a neurologist. You need to do this. You need to do that. And then what we had was through the courts and through certain things, we would write a letter on his behalf, basically saying, we assessed him. Our
Right.
psychiatrist assessed him. Due to his mental deficits, as it appears he's suffering from dementia or a traumatic brain injury, the client has been referred for neurological assessment and treatment and is not appropriate for treatment here.
Right.
So in a lot of cases, then what they would do is say, okay, we will follow up with neurology. The case is closed with you. That's no longer going to be
a criminal thing.
What the focus is here. Now,
Okay.
his criminal case may be held open until he follows up with that, but we linked people up here. The system is linking people with case management. It's a very person oriented. And look, it's by no means perfect. Not everybody qualifies for case management. And people could still not show up and he could end up in jail because he doesn't go to neurology. And of course he's not going to neurology because he can't remember he has an appointment. And if the case manager doesn't pick him up, or we had the case manager calling us one day because she's showing up at his house and he's not here. And how can I take him to an appointment if he's not here? And I'm like, I don't even know if the man knows what day it is. I can't get him to stay home.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Cause I had another one that was like that too. And all he could do was tell you his name, his birth certificate, his date of birth. I think he could give you whatever his passport number was. And then he could sing you the Jamaican national anthem. That was it. So anytime I would go to ask him about whatever crime he committed, that's what I got.
Right. Not helping you at all. Yeah.
No. That's spawn of Satan now beating up Tina, who's 16.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
See, you don't save mentally ill people, you save mentally ill dogs.
No, I did not pick that one out. I was a big fat liar and told Glenn that this cute little chocolate thing I was playing with wouldn't get very big. It was a lab, but he didn't know anything about dogs. And then he saw this one and go, oh, I really like this one. So now we have spawn of Satan.
So he's Glenn's dog when he does things wrong.
I don't own him. Mm-mm. I love him and he is all over me, but he is definitely Satan's dog. Yeah. Now he's probably going to come in here and rip my throat out. So.
Someone had asked, I lost it somewhere, about talking about a case that they were researching, triple homicide. I don't know who that was anymore. Oh, ask your question. We'll see what we can do. We've got some experts here.
To keep it really, really short and simple, a young mother who was 5 months pregnant, 10-month-old baby, supposedly went out in a cold, rainy night, drowned her baby daughter in a stream, and jumped in front of a train because she had postpartum depression. So that's the case that I'm working on. We do not think that that is exactly what happened, being that she was pregnant. You don't really have postpartum depression when you're pregnant. I know, crazy. In delving into this, I found out that her husband, who has some rather strange behaviors, as a teenager, was watching porn with his father. And I, believe it or not, am having a really hard time finding actual research on this. Covert incest, some things, but it's really sketchy. Suggestions?
Look at Nikki's face. Nikki's already ready to jump on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's like not a lot of background, but
no, but what you're saying makes complete sense to me. Is she's pregnant, so postpartum shouldn't apply.
Right.
If it's a pregnant female, it's almost always the baby daddy.
How old was the mother?
Yeah.
She was 25.
Okay.
She's young.
So
And
she's young. She's within the range for a psychotic break.
Well, they met in high school. He was a freshman at 16 and she was a senior at 18. And they literally married the minute he graduated high school because his parents were making him go off to college. They didn't want to be apart, so they went off. And there are now some questions about his sexuality.
Women, Kerri, women aren't usually train jumpers either. That's a male feature.
They
Well, I
can,
found
it can be. It depends upon how desperate she was and if she needed to be out of the house within. I mean, here's my thing with train jumpers. For an attempt, it's a cry for help because you can find the train schedule. If you
Right.
actually successfully jump in front of a train, you want to die.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that I think of. Number one, you might not find much on like covert incest, but this is child abuse. I would want to know about their backgrounds, both mom and dad, because there is a reason you're an 18-year-old female who wants to caretake this 16-year-old freshman, and you wait and you marry him. So what is your life like that you are you want to save and protect this damaged individual? Hormones can bring on, and pregnancy can bring on psychotic break.
I should mention that at the crime scene, there was no blood.
No blood.
No.
And she was hit by a train.
Supposedly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd question what her injuries were, her toxicology results, those kinds of things, because there's going to be blood with train.
I'm going to tell you this.
Femoral artery was severed. I mean, there should be a lot more going on there. So I'm pretty sure it was
secondary
staged.
crime scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen two people killed by train, one on purpose, one on accident, and it was the bloodiest, most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Yeah. So that makes
pretty
no
much
sense.
what everybody that I've been able to find who's talked about any kind of train impact. Even when you get hit with the train and you survive, you're a mess.
Yeah.
And you're more of a mess than she was. So
What
I'm
state
like,
was it, Jill?
South Carolina.
What's the age of consent? Sexual consent?
Oh, he would not have sex with her before they were married.
Yeah, so I definitely,
And
from a systemic standpoint, I would be looking at the families in the background.
Yep.
You're going to figure that if his sexuality is being questioned and he would not have sex with her until he was married, there's going to be the fear of God not approving. There's going to be, if she knows his secret, she has to be silenced.
The day before this, she had an ultrasound and found out she was having a boy. And she was so excited. She named him. I mean, they were all, just a gaga about this. But this happens the next day. And then as the wake and the funeral and everything are happening, her mother asks now her son-in-law, why was your mother not excited that she was having a boy? We had a girl, the baby's now dead, but what? And she said, well, she wasn't a virgin when you married and would taint our bloodline.
So you have that family piece. You also have the piece if he's showing pornographic material to someone, or he has been victimized himself, or he is afraid that he is going to victimize, or that the son may actually become him. It's kind of like the reincarnation of him, this second coming.
Thank you, because that's where I'm going with this. I'm thinking it's a systemic thing.
I would 100% be looking at what they would consider like intergenerational trauma.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
And again, these are cases, sometimes you can both come, I listen to my father and my uncle talk, and you think they came from two different families. You hear this from a lot of people. So even if there are siblings, it's their perception of reality. It's how the coping skills they innately have or were taught or kind of scraped together themselves that differentiates what one becomes versus the other. In a lot of situations. But yeah, with the deep religious roots, with the history of abuse, I would be looking systemically to see what was going on in the families.
Thanks. I that's where I was going, and I thank you.
No problem.
Because my two masters are in international relations and education. It's not psychology, but I taught psychology for 30 years. So
okay.
Well, if you need if you need, Jill, if you need access to certain websites or whatever, I
Oh, God,
have some,
yes.
like, I'll tell you the
Oh,
one
God,
that's the best thing ever is newspapers.com.
Oh, I have that. Yeah.
Do you? I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know why every agency doesn't have that for $50 a year,
Oh, yeah.
because
It is the best.
they printed so much stuff back then. It's crazy.
Hmm.
So they
Oh,
would
yeah.
never be allowed to do what they do now.
I found a whole history of the family,
Mhm.
and this one was a minister, and this one was a preacher, and this one married this one, and it was like, thank you so much. You made that so easy. Thank you. Yeah. But
Nikki,
yeah,
unblock you here. Unmute you. Have unmute. Okay.
I just had my undergrad, I did psychology and I was looking into going to sexual psychology. So I did a lot of research, and back in the day when I had access to databases, there is a lot of information on, you know, watching pornography with family and things like that and the effects on children.
I just, yeah. Point
Yeah,
me in the
you
right
just need those
direction where to find
databases.
it.
So I don't know
Okay.
if you maybe get in contact with a school that has access to these databases, that opens it up to all the journals and studies. That would be your best choice.
It's like, I figured I have to go that route, but you just don't want to subscribe hundreds of dollars, for access and then find out it's the wrong database.
Right.
So
I'll tell
that's
you
why
what
I'm
you
sorry
do,
to
Jill.
throw my
Like
stuff all out there, but
librarians are these, I love librarians. Nikki, you teach, you're not a librarian, right?
No, I'm a
Okay.
teacher, yeah.
Yeah. Librarians are these weird little creatures. And I know because I have a bunch of them that are friends. And they like puzzles. So I would find your local college, which right now is probably not open, and I would email them and tell them, let them find it for you, because I'll bet you they'll send it to you. And
They're
Erica, if you
probably-
tell them that I said that, you're dead. So, but yeah, no, they will go into those systems for you because they'll know which one.
That's the catch. Is like,
there's a million.
You found an abstract on something, but then when you read the fine print, it's like,
it's not what you want.
That's not what I want.
Yeah, and there'll be one. Every school has one crazy librarian, and
that's a really good idea.
We have one, and literally when I did my dissertation, it had never been done before, and I was of course freaking out and whatever. And I will tell you that one of our librarians found a research study that was done 25 years before, and it is the only time ever in history it's ever been done. And he was so he was like, that's okay, Kimberly. It only took me 20 minutes to find it. I'm like, I've been looking for 6 months, you jerk. Yeah. So now I'm like, whatever he wants, he gets. But they get bored because the students don't use them. So use them.
Oh, I will use the hell out of them. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Good ideas.
Yeah. They like challenges, and they like puzzles, and they like to know that they're helping. So.
And I am bored on summer break, so I might look through my old college stuff that I have here and see what I can find for you.
That'd be great. It's there's so much more involved there, but when that came out, they had broken up for a short time in high school because she discovered this. And I'm like, oh, why didn't you go with that impulse, But I said, that's really weird.
Yeah, well, it's really weird that she was so excited the day before, and then this happens the very next day. That doesn't make sense.
No.
So.
Oh, by the way, she had her, she was at her OBGYN the day before, because that's when she had the ultrasound. And the OBGYN said she did not, no.
She didn't present as being suicidal.
No psychosis, no postpartum depression, no, none. And she's on the record saying that.
Yeah, that doesn't fit. So,
it's
what else was I going to ask you? Hello, Spawn of Satan. God, he looks so cute and he's so damn bad. Kerri, you're going to be getting your own place soon. You need a Borgie.
No.
He's a therapy dog. They want him for therapy.
If I get a dog at all, much to my brother's dismay, I will be getting a French bulldog because they're so damn ugly. They're cute.
That is true. They are so ugly. They're cute. So, any other questions or cases or whatever? I do know, Jill, I do know Nikki has been saying she's, Nikki, have you been hearing anything about going back to work?
I actually just had a meeting yesterday and they said traditional school.
So that's what we're hearing, hybrid. But
they told us hybrid, but then they switched it to traditional unless parents decide to hold their kids
the governor
back.
came out and said, no, little kids are going to school. What do you, yeah, we'll get into that later. So Erica wants to know, what county are you in?
St. Lucie.
So,
It could change.
Erica, did you just roll your eyes? I saw that, girl.
I rolled my eyes too during the entire meeting. So,
well, I told, not all.
Wait, I only rolled my eyes because where we at, we are basing how we run our facilities off the school boards and their decisions. And right now, because they're up in air, we up in air. And that whole trauma training and all this stuff ties in. And with my job, I'm kind of like a lead person over staff. So it's just a little stressful. So that's why I asked. I wasn't rolling at you. I swear for God, I wasn't.
No, I think you have an attitude towards Nikki. I don't think you like Nikki.
I think Erica and I get along. We talked about those iPads.
Oh my God, Erica!
The prison system.
I wrote somebody, and you can actually buy the iPad for them. You're muted. So I can't hear. Probably a good thing.
So no.
And they buy them for students?
I know. I'm like, I can buy him an iPad if I need to?
No.
Huh. That's interesting. I gotta tell Erica that one. So, all right.
A little update. I do have an iPad now. I'm on it now.
You got your iPad?
Well, it's from work, but it's upgrade.
That's okay. That's okay. You got one, and now you have to find something new to complain about. So, I guess that's it. Kerri, anything else you want to throw at everybody?
I think that's it. Like I said, if I think of a couple of things, I'll put together some links and I'll email them to you so you can share with the group.
No, I want you to do it. Same thing I tell Larry. Larry is all over. Larry got into a fight with my oldest sister. It was the best day ever because I said, don't back down from her because that bitch needs to be smacked. So, and then she yelled at me and I said, don't yell at me. I have friends in places you don't even want to know. And she stopped talking. It was the best day ever. But no, Larry puts up experiences or cases and things like that. He has his own interaction with this people on that page. So
just post them directly to the page.
Post them directly to the page using your name. And if you want to also put your website, put all that stuff on there so that they can track you down. And because I told Bethany the same thing. So, but I have to edit out a few little things that we said before.
I'm gonna have to join again, Kimberly, because I got pissed off and left.
Well,
all those know-it-all keyboard commandos that know everything about.
Oh yes, the Monday morning quarterbacks after all the incidents.
Kerri, the funny thing is Larry posted pictures of an execution.
I saw that he got put in Facebook jail.
Yeah, he got put in Facebook jail. Here's the deal. My sister is yelling at him because, one, I don't like name dropping. Well, Dr. Masnick is my sister. I'm like, well, Dr. Masnick's fucking adopted. So, She didn't like that too well.
I was very professional. I was very, very gentlemanly.
And oh my God, Larry, that picture showed nothing.
Well, and I have to tell you, anytime those pictures go up, I'll be in my office. I'm like, who wants to see dead bodies?
Those are public pictures, my God. You know?
Yeah. So she goes psycho. But here's the funny thing. My nephews that follow me on that page, one turns 49 this year, one turns 44 this year, and the other one will be 22. At what age can she not helicopter mom them?
Time to change the diapers.
I'm like,
Cut the cord.
oh my God. So I actually really do want to text my oldest nephew and go, your mom doesn't just yell at you for the shit you post. She's yelling about things for you. So he'll lose his mind and just lose his mind. So she was, yeah. So it was funny. You know, I get a message from him. I get a message from her and Larry and my sister are in a fight. I'm like, this is awesome. So the only thing that would have been better is if he'd taken her down. So, but, okay, guys, it has been fun. I think next week, God, I'm going to have to try and figure it out. Somebody that was online last week, somebody that has been to Wine and Crime at the Blue Door. I'm clueless as to who this person is. Husband was law enforcement. He's retired and he's written 2 books. I got the books in the mail today. So before I decide to allow this person to come on and talk about these stories, I want to make sure that these cases are 1, legit, 2, he's, you know, I'm cool with who he is. But if you have something, because it may take me a little bit longer to go through these, give me something. So give me something like, you could have brought up the fact that the Golden State Killer was a pansy and took the easy way out when California isn't going to kill anybody anyway. Oh, that just might be me that's bitter.
That
you know,
documentary started based upon the book by Michelle
Did it?
McNamara. That's on HBO also.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. So you want to see something from linguistics? You have to wait. I don't go to school till August. Yeah, Jill's already like, or no, it was Wanda that asked me. She goes, how's your class going? I'm like, it's not a class, it's a damn degree. I'm going to be there for 2 years. Lori Vallow, update on Lori Vallow. I believe she is still in jail. Nothing has changed. Nothing whatsoever. So, Ailey, nothing on that. But I do believe that we do know for a fact now that her brother was there when the bodies were buried. I don't, you know me, I already tell you guys, I don't like kids. I don't do kids well. That whatever heinous means, I am going to order the transcripts, but I'm almost afraid to see what was done to the girl.
Yeah.
So that may be one that goes to therapy with me before I read it. But yeah, so there's nothing going on yet, but I'm praying to God that they at least get her for abandonment and this and that. But I think they're, you know, it's going to be tough to get him. And I know he's got to be involved, but I think it's going to be tough to get him unless somebody's got to turn. So, yeah. So, and then you guys made me watch that horrible circus freak of a show, Tiger King. And I don't know how you can get that many crazy people, that many felons. They're not even supposed to be together. How do you get that many felons and they're not in jail
He had a
together?
deal to hire felons.
Yeah, I was
Because
like,
they cut your tax break. They do all this other stuff.
yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. All I could think of the whole time was I was like, this is like a circus of felons. They're so weird.
I could not stop watching because it was a train wreck.
Oh my God. You got to finish watching it because it is a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
It's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. But that case has been reopened and I look every day because they're pretty positive And I'm anxious to see if Carol goes down. So could be interesting.
Yeah. Netflix has a lot of good true crime documentaries right now. I just watched the one on the U.S. Olympic team with Larry Nasser.
Okay. Okay.
They
Give
have the
me
Epstein thing now. They have the Latoya, the girl that was sex trafficked and killed her.
Yes.
They
I
have
did
that
watch the
story on there now.
Epstein thing. That's sad. It was a little rough because it's
Yeah.
right here. If you can think of something, Glenn, see if you can find something that we just watched Ozark. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. So I need something for he and I to watch together. So during the day, I, have been given some suggestions and whatever, but
They were Waco also. They did Waco really well.
did they? Okay, then
Mhm.
maybe I'll try that with him. So, he's a pansy and he's vanilla. So I'm trying to get to my 20th anniversary. I'm not trying to get divorced before then. So, but for those of you that are going to be there, Kerri will be at CrimeCon. I am trying to advocate for her to put in her own submission. And actually, you could probably still do it now since we've been put off till October. But I think you represent a different community.
Mhm.
So I think you should put in a proposal for a presentation.
I will think
So,
about it.
so
A lot of
yeah.
balls in the air right now.
Like I drop balls all day long every day.
You got to get me
So-
that stuff on the podcast information too.
Oh, okay. I gotta get a hold of Pierre. Okay, not a problem. All right, you guys have a great night. I will see you, some of you sooner than later, but I will definitely see everybody hopefully next Wednesday. And seriously, send me a message if you've got some case, something specific you want to talk about. Let's do it. Okay?
Kerri,
Just don't give me a
seriously,
skirt.
look at that link, that case law link.
I
sent
will.
you.
I opened it so I can save it for later and I'll take a
Okay.
look. I
Thank you.
appreciate you sharing that.
Good deal. And Larry, I am going to call you because I am going to request Gerard's records from the corrections facility, but I want to make sure I'm hitting obstacle. Nobody wants to talk. I have a chief that told the underlings, give her everything she's asking for, and they were refusing. So I don't want to run up against a problem with corrections. So I want to make sure I do it right. So
Have you talked to your state representative or your state senator and gone through their office?
No,
That's the way to go.
that's the way to go.
Present your credentials to them and say, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing
Okay.
a case study, and then let them open the door for you.
Okay, I can do that. And
You won't piss off the police.
Yeah, no. So trying not to piss off the popo, not at all. So, and especially corrections, because that's where my heart is. So I can piss off some cops that I don't care too much about, but
I can tell you where the record is. The record is right there outside of Union or FSP. It's right there in the big warehouse. And there,
is it?
all the rest of the old ones, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Well, you guys have fun. Kerri, thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for being so entertaining. And thank you for not telling any of our undergrad stories of any adventures we may
Well,
or may.
Those are costs. I mean, bottle of bourbon at least to share those stories.
Yeah, you'll never get one because we're not talking about midget stealing.
Nope.
We're not talking about
Houses for rent.
Yeah, we're not going. We have never eaten at Outback.
Nope.
And no.
We've never gone swimming at a hotel pool.
Nope. Nope. So I am an angel.
I have my halo right here.
Yes.
I will post the links to some of this stuff, and I'll put my contact information up on your page also this way if anybody has anything.
Okay. Yep. And make
Right.
sure you jump in there and participate. You're no different than me. That's why that's Larry does it. Everybody, everybody that has credentials behind them, I want them to share because it helps everybody make decisions.
You got it.
All right.
All right. Good night,
All
everybody.
right, guys. Talk to you later. Catch you next week. Bye.